This is the fourth time I'm restarting this. I've lost my touch, guys. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the very first episode in the Female Genius Summer School. I'm so excited, okay? When I was thinking about what am I going to bestow my geniuses this summer, like they're going to be so bored without me. I can't take a summer off, okay? The kids need me. The kids need me. And I was reminiscing a little bit on my summers in childhood. And I was one of those really weird kids that loved, school. Okay. I hated summer holidays. I hated holidays because it meant that I couldn't go into school. I liked learning. I liked seeing all my friends. I liked doing all of that stuff. And to me, summer felt like a robbery of that. So one thing I always remember I used to sometimes do it with my dad. As I grew older, I kind of started doing it by myself. I would basically make myself a summer syllabus. Everything that I wanted to read, watch, consume, most importantly, create, whether it was stories or plays or songs, whatever it was. And it's basically a list of things that I had to complete by the end of summer. This also include places to visit like museums or the cinema or parks or games to finish. But ultimately, I curated a summer syllabus that was expertly designed for all of the things I'm interested in, all of the things I loved and I wanted to learn more about that I particularly didn't have time to do so within the academic year. And so that is the inspiration by Female Genius Summer School. I kind of wanted to curate a little syllabus of things to engage and spark interest and curiosity. Things for something that you can come back to every week and listen to the episode and hopefully spurs you on to create something new, to explore different types of interest. I tried to curate a wide range of topics, but that's neither here nor there. In this episode particularly, I kind of wanted this to act like your personal summer syllabus, right? Or a reading list almost. I'm going to be giving people ideas of things to read, to watch, and to create over the course of the summer to beat the summer boredom and let's spend less time on our phones and more time engaging intellectual curiosity. I think it's very interesting because this is something to me that doesn't feel very foreign. And speaking to some of my friends and speaking to what my friends used to do during the summer, it was kind of like, well, I just used to play. And like now we have all of this unfettered time. They spend the majority of it on TikTok or on social media and kind of drowning in this endless sea of information. I've been currently reading this book called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. And in this book, Neil Postman kind of basically makes the argument that we're a little bit screwed by the way our collective attention and the way society engages and interacts with knowledge now as a form of entertainment because of the rise of television. This was written like in the 1980s, but a lot of these messages are still quite salient today. And in this book, he really hammers, to me personally, he really hammers the points home by comparing or making comparisons between the current state of society at that point in the 1990s to two hallmarks of dystopian literature, 1984 and Brave New World. And he has this really, really important quote. I'm going to read it. Is what Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us, and Huxley feared that the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Okay, and ever since I read it, I was like, oh my God, it's true. Because if you think about it, when you scroll on TikTok, when you spend 5 hours of TikTok, how many of the things you scroll on TikTok actually stick in your mind? How many of those things that you scroll actually engage your curiosities, that provide basis and launch pads for conversations of deep intellectual curiosity? And it made me think that this whole conversation about the rise of anti-intellectualism, ironically, is a conversation that has been had on TikTok. And it kind of made me think about why are we kind of straying away from more traditional forms of exploring our curiosity? Why are we straying away from reading books and going to libraries and going to lectures and going to discussions? And there are probably lots of different reasons for that, right? Henry Gurr and Wendy Proum, if I'm pronouncing a surname wrong, if you're new here, notoriously, I can't pronounce names. Okay. And this isn't even on a racist thing. It's like my tongue doesn't move properly. Poor time. Oh gosh. Anyway, Henry Gurr and Wendy Brown make the argument that the fact that we're moving towards a more neoliberal society, and by neoliberal, in very simple terms, is like this political and sociological ideology that advocates for this idea of free markets, reduced government intention, and basically individual responsibility. Okay, and Gurr and Brown make this argument that because of the rise of neoliberalism Education systems within this political and economical framework train students to value knowledge as a means to an end, typically for success in career or social mobility, rather than a measure of transformation, liberation, and understanding. And when you position education, learning, and, engaging your curiosities as something that is to advance a career ladder, right? In addition to the large amounts of burnout and stress that are associated with our education systems nowadays, it makes sense why people want to stray away from traditional forms of learning and engaging curiosities. So some people, reading a book is an intense form of trauma. They pick up a book and they start shaking and thinking about their English language exam that they flopped in like 2017. It's something that is very crippling. And to them, this idea of learning and spending time studying something is something associated with uni or exams, or I need to study to get further into career and make money. It's no longer a form of enjoyment and learning and transformation of the self and the people around us. Is more of a thing about how far can we get in this rat race of a world that we live in. There are also other things that might also contribute to this notion, and other things I've also discussed on the podcast, such as shortening attention span due to social media. I discussed this on the dopamine fallacy episode, and also the lack of third spaces, and also the lack of third spaces geared around collective education, right? Such as public lectures, or less people are engaging or going to the library, things like that. And so there are loads of different reasons. So I kind of want to take this episode as an opportunity to figure out how you can curate a summer filled with intellectual curiosity that does not stimulate or give you some form of anxiety, right? What can we begin to engage with that reframes intellectual pursuits from a lens of stress and burnout to one of curiosity and fun? So I have curated an amazing list of things for you guys to do to make sure you're having a very genius summer. Because how can I start off the genius summer school without giving you guys a reading list? I'd be a bad teacher if I didn't prep you. So here are some of my recommendations that are absolutely pure genius. Anyway, geniuses, welcome to the very first episode of Female Genius Summer School.
Female Genius.
The first segment, I kind of want to do this for my music lovers, because we all love music. We all get down to a good tune. This is not a music podcast, in all honesty. So I'm not going to tell you to get into specifics, because everybody has a different taste of music. Everybody likes a little bit different. I've been so much in my rock bag. Me and Paramore, me and my early 2000s rock. Honestly, when people are like, you were born in the wrong era. If I was a teenager during the time Teenage Dirtbag came out, during the time that Paramore was dropping pure bombs and hits, yep, I'd have 25 piercings by now, and like my eyelids like rimmed in black. I genuinely, that's my era. But anyway, I kind of wanted to take this segment to remind you that music is ultimately a form of poetry and art, and a time capsule into the history and sociological experience of the artist that's creating the music at the time. While I will admit some pieces of music that are very who's calling my phone, like Nokia, like little things like that are fun, but there are a lot of pieces of music that are trying to tell you something deep and different. And so if you are a bit of a music head this summer, this might be something you want to kind of explore, right? I personally would suggest that you select 2 or 3 albums. This does not have to be in a particular genre or music, anything that intrigues you. For example, you might want to pick Back to Black by Amy Winehouse, or you might want to do Renaissance by Beyonce, okay? 2014 Forest Hill Drive, Cowboy Carter, and then spend some time listening and dissecting to the album as a whole. As in, sit down and listen to the whole album, not while you're running, not while you're jogging on the treadmill, not while you're talking to your friends, not as like background music while you're getting ready. Like really sit down and listen to the album. Make notes of your thoughts and opinions. Make notes of lyrics that stand out, little moments in the music that really encapsulate the feeling that the artist is trying to get, or a feeling that you feel like you've received from hearing that piece of music, right? And then go into doing some research and dissecting different interviews the artists have made about the song pieces. Why was the album made? What was important about why the album was made? What were important sociological and historical situations that might have happened at the time that the artist was made? You can try to treat music as a history book, of music as your launch pad into exploring some of the sociological realities of some people in this world, right? I recently got a record player with a CD player on it, and I've been finding some of my dad's old CDs, and he has a lot of like 80s Motown, soul, gospel stuff. And I've actually been like playing the albums and literally sitting. I might have like my notebook or like my journal in front of me and just kind of like doodling, but sitting and kind of consuming the whole album as a whole. But I like listening to the sonic progressions of the album, and it's actually such a good engaging point between me and my dad, because he will like kind of come into my room as I'm listening to it and he'll be like, oh my god, this song, this was why it was so cool that day. This is like a little bit of a piece of history about this artist that I knew. And it's also a very good bonding piece, but also allows me to understand a lot of the lens and situation and the landscapes going on at the time. And I never really deeped how important music is as a form of storytelling until those little moments there. And that is something you can continue to explore during the summer. If you're unsure about what albums to start off, if you really like the idea of sonically engaging with albums in this way, then here are some of mine that I think are very interesting from a dissection perspective. The album Hypochondriac by Brackens is like this raw, sonically stimulating spiral into the brain of like an anxious, heartbroken Gen Z. It mixes like, you know, hyperpop and punk rock into like this feeling of existential dread. And the whole sonic landscape is lit up by a lot of video game sounds that are very, say, like COD and like, you know, GTA and all of these things. It really does feel like you're diving deep into Brackens' mind, and he explores and he tackles his ultimate loneliness at the end of the day. And it's a very, very interesting album to listen to and to also dissect. The only downside of this album is Brackens has disappeared off the face of the planet. There are not a lot of interviews and nobody really knows what's going on, but the Reddit dissections of this album, real tea, it's so good. Another album I recommend is The Jessie, particularly volume 4, but all volumes of The Jessie by Jacob Collier. And the Jessie volumes basically feel like this inter-humanity cross-genre symphony, okay? And with each track being an exploration of a different style of music that almost transcends the genre that it's taken inspiration from. Jacob Collier is a musical genius. I had the privilege of seeing him live in December. I just remember sat there with my friend Aradia being like, this is insane that somebody is this talented and has such an awareness to be able to blend and bend music like this is insane. Jacob Collier is insane, and The Jessie Volume 4 is an incredible sonic experience. This one I'm gonna butcher, but it's the most recent album by Bad Bunny. I can't do it. Hold on. Debutera Más Fotos. Stop. Simran and Garrett are gonna cook me alive for that. Oh my god. Anyway, and so this is the most recent album by Bad Bunny, and there's a lot of sociological and historical conversations happening, as well as Bad Bunny talking about grappling with fame and heartbrokenness and love, right? Despite it being in an alternate language, if you don't speak English, and if you are fluent in Spanish, great, but I'm not yet. But nonetheless, it gives you a window and evokes a level of empathy for exploring Bad Bunny's lens into his culture, his heartbreak, and his memory. And you can still enjoy it sonically and then go and find out a little bit more about the language and the culture and what he's speaking about. It's actually really good from a neuroscientific perspective to actually like listen and read and engage with things in a different language and try to see if you can spot things and words that, you know, it's just really good for your brain. Anyway, onwards. You know what we're gonna do next? We gotta talk about books, okay? You will be reading a book this summer. I promise you that, okay?
Female genius.
You've got to be reading books this summer, okay? I've said it before, I've said it again. Reading books is so good for your brain. Fiction and non-fiction. Fiction develops empathy. It's so good for your brain pathways. It's so good about preventing neurodegeneration and neurocognitive decline. It's so important. Non-fiction books as well, engaging with knowledge, learning more about the society of reading, curing your attention span. You gotta read. Okay? Like, if you're gonna make one promise, if you haven't read by the end of Female Genius Summer School one book and given me a report, you're gonna be in detention, okay? You're gonna have to repeat the academic year. Okay, I have a couple of recommendations. I have 3 non-fiction ones and a couple fiction ones, and then I'm gonna tell you what's on my personal summer reading list as well. So we have Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, which is the one I spoke about earlier in this episode. I think it's amazing. Again, is this exploration into the fact that now we live in a society that is so governed and pushed by this need for entertainment. We always must be entertained to consume any piece of knowledge and to interact with knowledge and education. And that is something really dangerous. And he explores that in this extended essay in this book. All About Love by Bell Hooks. I've been pondering about love a lot lately. Let's take a female genius side note, okay? One of my friends is getting married, and one of my friends, like a lot of my friends are in romantic situations, and I kind of feel like I've always been a little bit of a fly on the wall, observing, listening, and hearing. And when a lot of people ask me about my perspectives on romantic love, I'm a little bit like, like don't want to do it. The other day, I sat down for 2 hours with the Sinners soundtrack playing on loop, like again and again and again. And I journaled like 10 pages about my ponderings of romantic love, and my brain has been unlocked. Really great to journal, by the way. But it made me really think about some of my perceptions and my windows into love. I might do a mini episode on this, actually, because now I'm thinking about it a lot. And so when I was writing this list, I was like, oh my God, All About Love by Bell Hooks. Have you ended the academic year and your girlfriend just broken up with you? Have you got into a problematic summer romance? I think All About Love is just not this exploration about personal and individual perspective of love and a commentary on that, but it's also, as a society, the world is burning apart. And I think it does make this argument about how we as a collective and as a community are so important to make love a primary value in which we pursue in all of the things that we do. Love Bell Hooks, okay. The first time I ever heard about Bell Hooks was not through her work. It was through the article that she called Beyonce a terrorist. And I found it absolutely funny. I was like, I need to know who this woman is. Like, I love Beyonce, but I need to actually kind of understand where she's coming from. And since then, it's all been really, really interesting to read. All About Love is probably Bell Hooks' most famous books, is referenced within books. I was reading another book, and in the book, they were talking about Bell Hooks' All About Love. So you might as well give yourself the opportunity to read and engage with it and see what you learn. The final one is Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, and this book is basically Johan Hari's exploration into the fact that our attention span is being stolen from us. It talks about the detrimental effects of the fact that our collective attention as a society is being actively degraded and destroyed, how these big tech moguls are controlling it and why it's going to have a massive impact in the future, the rise of people being diagnosed with ADHD and the prescriptions of ADHD medicine. It's a really, really interesting book that starts from the self, the people around you, and then the wider world. And I love the approach and the lens that it takes. I'm, in all honesty, not a big fan of non-fiction books. If you look at my bookshelves, I can probably give you about 5 or 6. But these are books that I found really interesting to read because they're really, really well written. And also, I think the message is salient and so important for everybody to read. Now, boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about fiction books you're going to read. If you're in the mood for a bit of romance, Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. This book is one of my favorite romance books all the time. It is about this mathematician who's basically exploring time and this struggling, failing artist who has a mood disorder. And they kind of meet in this very serendipitous way. And it's them exploring these very complex emotions within themselves, within the landscape of exploring and trying to understand time and trying to understand their personal histories better and how they relate to each other. It's a very emotionally intimate book. And you kind of read it and you kind of feel like, whoa, like, am I really supposed to be reading and experiencing this? But Olivia Blake writes in a way where all of the things the characters are experiencing, you ultimately experience. Like, I was getting shivers in places and I was tearing up in places. I was like, wow, I really feel so immersed in this character. It's such a beautifully written book. I love Olivia Blake so much. If I always say, like, if I had a author on this podcast, R.F. Kuang, Olivia Blake, Emily Henry, those are my big 3. Those are like, you ask me my big 3, I'm not telling you my star signs, I'm telling you R.F. Kuang, Olivia Blake, Emily Henry. Speaking of Emily Henry, I will always recommend Beach Read by Emily Henry. Beach Read follows a girl called January who recently lost her father, and after the death of her father, she figures out that her dad has been cheating on her mom like this entire time and nobody told her. So her perception of love as a romance author has been broken apart. And so she moves into her dad's holiday home to pack up all of his stuff. And next door is her academic rival. And they basically challenge each other to write the other person's genre. So they're both authors. And so he writes a romance book and she writes like a very dark, like, fiction tale book, and they kind of fall in love while doing it, and it's just so amazing. Do you know what the book sounds like to me? Like The Cars Outside by James Arthur. Oh darling, all of the city lights. I'm so bad at describing books. Okay, if you're looking for a mystery book to read this summer, Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. It is your classic who done it tell. Person wakes up, realizes Evelyn Hardcastle is about to get murdered, and he has been tasked to figure out the mystery. That is all I can literally tell you. Do not read the blurb. If you get the book, do not read the blurb. I went into Waterstones and the kindest, loveliest girl recommended me the book, where she was like, please do not read the blurb. Just take my word for it and read the book. And that is the best thing you can do, because it's kind of spoils it if you read the blurb. But it's a subversion of the genre that I thought was so amazing, and I love a good whodunit. Me and Agatha Christie locked in. She's in my big 4. And so I really like what Stuart did to the genre. I am so enthralled, and it's such a good, enthralling, nail-biting mystery. Some of the books that I'm reading this summer, I'm not going to spend time to like break it down, but I will kind of go through it. My personal summer reading list includes The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I am a young woman in my 20s trying to explore and figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. How have I not read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath? Oathbound by Tracy Dion, which is the third book in the Legendborn series. I'm going to start reading it this week. I have 10 pages left of Amusing Ourselves to Death, and I'm on that book like a rocket and a poppet, whatever they used to say. The Skyland series is this romance series because I wanted to read more romance that centered Black women. I just realized I don't really do that much. I'm on my third book right now, and I've been enjoying it. I've been tearing up a little bit. It's been good. Your Brain on Music by Daniel Levitin. Again, a neuroscientific exploration. It's my one non-fiction book other than Amusing Ourselves to Death that I'm reading this summer, so you guys should be proud of me. Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, literally the size of my fucking forehead. That book is humongous, but as a fantasy lover, I need to read it. I can't believe I haven't read it. And then Jade City by Fondly. Those are my personal book recommendations. Okay, let's get into things that you should be watching.
Female genius.
Right. But before we go into movies, I feel like we should all be getting into a documentary bag, okay? Because that's something I have also failed at. Believe it or not, I'm a nerd that doesn't like watching documentaries. Shock, horror. I just prefer to get my information from a book or a good podcast. I will eat down a history podcast. I will eat down a deep dive 10-hour podcast exploring a specific law criminal case. I'll do it. But sitting down watching a documentary, it doesn't do it for me. It's like it activates like sleep in me. I don't know why. But I do think we can be a little bit intentional about selecting documentaries and things to watch this summer. I would always suggest, as I do with books and anything, to pick an area of your interest, whether it's a film or a particular crime case or a history of a part of the world. I'm so obsessed with Greek mythology right now at the moment. I've always been obsessed, actually. I don't know, but right now I feel like I'm exploring it a lot more. And so I've been watching documentaries that align with that case. I also love watching the makings of films. I love seeing how a film came together, how they pitched the film, how they directed the film, how the idea was even synthesized and brought about in the first place. What cameras did you use for the film? Why did you use that cameras? How did the music came to be? I'm a little bit obsessed with film documentaries about how they make films. And so they have loads of those on Disney Plus, and I watch all of them. Anytime there's a new Disney Pixar movie, I've watched the making of, maybe even before I've even watched the Disney Pixar movie in of itself. So I can't lie, if you want to have some genius summer, make sure you pick a documentary. If you have documentary recommendations, please let me know. I will be posting a summary of this reading list on social media. So I'd love to share some documentary recommendations as well. Okay. In terms of films and TV shows, guys, if you haven't watched the movie Soul, you need to watch the movie Soul. Soul follows Joe Gardner, who is this middle school music teacher with dreams of becoming a professional jazz pianist. And just as he lands the gig of a lifetime, right, an accident transports his soul, which is a very kind way of saying he dies, right, to the great before, which is this fantastical realm where souls develop before going to Earth. There he meets this underdeveloped soul called 22. 22 is cynical, is like, yeah, I don't really want to live. Like, I don't really want to go and be a human being. Like, you guys sound stressful. 22 has the right idea, in all honesty. And together they explore what it truly means to have purpose, blending a lot of existential themes with heartwarming storytelling and jazz music. And it's so good. Guys, I sobbed. This movie is so incredible, and I always recommend it to so many people. And if you're going to watch a movie that is going to allow you to consider and reconsider what it does it mean to live and have a purpose and be a human being, then Soul is one of them. Guys, you knew this was going to be on the list. It had to be on the list. If you have not watched Sinners, that actually might be, I always say, I think I watch one amazing movie a year. Everything else is kind of like 7, 6, 7, 8. That was a 10 out of 10. I've watched it 4 times in cinemas. I'm getting the Blu-ray DVD. I'm hosting a Sinners-themed movie night next month. That's how much I love this movie. But if you haven't watched Sinners, it's set in 1932 Mississippi during Jim Crow era. And if you're unfamiliar with Jim Crow, it's basically where there was large amounts of segregation between white people and black people. And Sinners followed 2 brothers, Smoke and Stack, played by Michael V. Jordan himself. Michael V. Daddy Jordan! Who returns from Chicago to open a black-owned juke joint. And they team up with their nephew Sammy, who is this fantastic, talented blues musician, where they face both racist, real-world, and literal, mystical, vampiric threats. And that's all I'm going to say, right? So good. So good. Okay, another movie I really recommend is Call Me By Your Name by Luca Guadagnino. You know what? Actually, I should actually take accountability that I should actually like go and read, like, and listen to how to pronounce their names before I come and do podcast episodes, because it's actually really a bit embarrassing. It kind of feels very disrespectful. But anyway, Luca's one of my favorite modern directors. Anything that he puts out, queer challenges, I just love the way he sees and creates movies and his use of the camera lens. I'm obsessed, right? And I loved his directors on directors with Denis Villeneuve. He directed Dune, and just their conversation, there was a fanboying over each other, and I was here for it. And I love both of those directors, so I was super excited. Call Me by Your Name is set in 1983 in northern Italy, and it tells the story of 17-year-old Elio Perlman and his growing attraction to Oliver, this confident American student staying with his family for the summer. And the two form this deep and passionate bond, and this film explores first love, self-discovery, and the fleeting transformation and nature of desire across this beautiful, like, Italian summer landscape. And if you want to cry this summer, Call Me by Your Name. I just think it's very salient, especially as I do a lot of exploration and thinking about love. Honestly, if you want to stack your summer, if you want to do a summer stack, All About Love by Bell Hooks, Call Me by Your Name, together, then Soul, you will fall apart. Sad girl summer, but it's so good. And then finally, I really want to recommend for a movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is an A24 film. And it's basically when a Chinese-American laundromat owner, Evelyn Wang, is suddenly thrown into a chaotic multiverse crisis. She must connect with alternate versions of herself to stop a mysterious force that threatens all existence. It blends martial arts action with absurd humor, emotional depth, and philosophical questionings and musings. And it's an explosive genre-bending ride, and it's amazing. And I cried like, what's it called? I would have loved just doing laundry in another lifetime with you. It's amazing. It's amazing. I think it also deals with a lot of family trauma. Like, if you are a first generation from POC, you tend to experience this gap between your family, and it does explore, and it does a masterful job of tackling that and, like, dealing with different philosophical and family traumas. And it's such an amazing film, and I can't do anything but to recommend when you do your movie nights. Okay, to finish off this episode, I kind of want to tell you guys about things I think you should be creating this summer.
Female genius.
Now, creating, I believe, is extremely important part of this summer genius summer school experience, but also your summer experience. We live in such a consumption-based era. We are always consuming something. Hell, you're consuming my podcast right now. You're listening to my voice, right? But I truly believe to construct a very intellectually engaging summer, but also for yourself, for your soul, for your heart, it's truly important and necessary and vital to engage in the art of creating this summer, right? Not only is it amazing for how you feel in your, but this is female genius, it's important for your brain too, right? When you create something, you're activating multiple brain regions simultaneously. Your memory center, your emotional center, your amygdala, your motor skills, your planning, and strengthens the neural connections between these brain regions, which ultimately helps with cognitive decline. The act of creating is also very important for mood regulation because they regulate and stimulate dopamine and serotonin, particularly once you start entering this idea of the flow state, which I've spoken about in the dopamine detox episode before. This can be deeply therapeutic and has psychological benefits, especially when dealing with times of grief, uncertainty, and stress. So after a long academic year, after a long day of work, it's so beneficial for your brain, for your mental health, to pick up and just enter this idea of creating something. On top of this, it allows you to engage and interact with your own world in a meaningful, transformative way. You kind of encapsulate the feelings that you experience at a time and exploring the feelings or your perspective of our world at the time. And I think that's a very powerful thing to do. Not to publish, not for consumption of anyone else, not to perform for anyone else, but to create for yourself. And that is something that I feel like we're not very taught to do very often. I mean, if you think about our education system, we're always creating for something to be marked, right? We create a piece of work for our teachers to tear it apart so we can get an even better grade. We perform a piece so we can get a grade and we can get applause. On TikTok, we do our day in the life. We take a picture of our food. We go to the specific restaurants. We can take this really nice picture to post online. We've kind of curated an existence that is so focused on performing. How do we perform? How do we make ourselves look amazing? How do we perform a feeling or an emotion or a thought? And so I implore you, when you go into taking this act of creating this summer, and I want to ask you to try and create not from a place with the intention of performance, but create from the intention of creating. And that might feel very confusing and very dissonant from the position in life that you are currently exploring right now. And it's something that you might have to be quite intentional about crafting that space and reminding yourself you're not creating for performance, you are creating for yourself. You're not creating for others' consumptions, you are creating for your own joy and soul to experience what it's like to create. So here are some little small tasks that I would recommend to kind of kickstart your creative expression, but you can do this in any way that feels you feel called to. I would also ask you to reminisce to when you were a childhood. What did you enjoy creating when you were a childhood? Did you like writing stories? Did you like making music? Did you like drawing? Try and think about some of the lens and realms that you have abandoned due to the pursuit of a specific career or pathway, or you were disencouraged from doing because you weren't quote unquote good enough to continue pursuing it. And maybe go back to those roots and give your childhood self the opportunity to create from that place again. Morning pages is also another really good way to explore this creative aspect of yourself. This has been popularized and introduced by Julia Cameron in the book The Artist's Way. Think Doechii. Doechii did this whole YouTube series before Alligator Bites Never Healed dropped, where she did the whole Artist's Ways journey. It's like his own female genius summer school with its own syllabus and everything. And I think it was a large push and reason to why she created her Grammy Award-winning album. But in Artist's Way, it suggests this idea of making morning pages, which is where you wake up and you write 3 pages of a stream of consciousness in whatever format you desire. And in theory, the intention is to clear your mind, and you also begin writing freely without judgment. As a result of beginning to write freely without judgment, this idea is that in 3 or 4 days' time, after you get used to just writing whatever you think, without judgment, without thought, without thinking, oh, somebody else might read this, right? You begin to bypass your ego and your inner critic to tap into raw, unfiltered ideas and feelings that can help inspire other things you want to create in the future. So when you wake up in the morning, take a plain notebook. It doesn't even have to be nice. Plain sheet of paper, a scrap piece of paper, right? And then write 3 pages. And you might start to notice, this is a good idea for a poem. Or, I actually kind of want to tap into this and write a short story. Or, this is an emotion that keeps playing in my mind. Maybe I want to write a song. These are all these different things. Or maybe I want to create a short film. Is a really good way to potentially explore your creativity this summer. Anyway, geniuses, I hope you enjoyed this first beginning episode of Female Genius Summer School. I've said it before, I'm going to be so late to boxing, guys. It's actually insane. But I'm wearing a sports bra, but I shouldn't be touching my boobs on camera. But I just don't think it's lifty enough for boxing. Anyway, TMI. But I really hope you enjoy this episode, and I really want to know what you guys create over the summer. It'd kind of be cool if some people tell me what they've been up to, how they felt about it, how they felt about the things. But no worries if not. This is your summer. Next week's episode, or next week's track, we are going to be talking about sex. Okay? We're going to be talking about sex. We are going to be talking about Gen Z's approach and perspectives and ideas, and why Gen Z, according to documents and theories and statistics, having the least amount of sex of any generation ever. It is absolutely surprising. So see you guys next week to talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Bye, guys.
Female Genius.